Capacity is a big issue in India because it takes a long time to build bricks and mortar. It's very bad for the environment. Land use is a complex issue in India. And expensive, and it's perhaps a misallocation of resources. Currently, the vast majority of options either lie in on campus or online. That's it, and there's not very much in the middle. Just talk to us a little bit about your vision as we've got so used to hybrid working and rotating people through hot desks in corporate environment, same in government now as well, how you see that playing out and using the existing infrastructure that's built much more efficiently and effectively to produce greater levels of capacity.
This transition has already happened in the workplace. Think of WeWork, right? Same infrastructure, a whole bunch of other entities, whether it's startups or various or other kinds of economic entities, are using the same space. They're just booking themselves a spot, going there, doing their own thing, and carrying on. Now, I understand there may be certain areas of science where you have specialized equipment, etc. But remember, for the most part, that is postgraduate education. And it is specialized high science. Much of education doesn't require all of this. So it is quite okay, in my view, to think of this, begin thinking of to the extent we have face-to-face interaction, we begin to do this basically like WeWork. You may even have for-hire campuses. In the morning, it is Ashoka University. In the evening, it is Penn State. Why not? And if they want a lab even, there's a lab at IIT Delhi which can be hired for several hours or a piece of equipment or whatever it is for a certain time. You go and do your experiments or whatever it is you want to do. Now, at the very cutting edge of very high science, I understand they need dedicated stuff. For the bulk of stuff, you don't need all of this. So I think we need to begin thinking of this. You know, people do their lectures, they've already understood it, done some tests, they've crossed some level of capability, then maybe that's your first semester. In the second semester, it's in campus, so to speak, and that in campus could be anywhere, in any campus. You could be simultaneously doing this in some WeWork type space, and then you hire a lab and you do your own thing. It can all be very disaggregated approach. What this will do is radically lower the amount of bricks and mortar we require. That is the real cost of education, and also, of course, professors. And now what you do is you free up the professors from giving lectures because, you know, they just watch YouTube. Now all they're doing is all the hands-on stuff. So now suddenly they can do all the cutting edge other things. So now same number of professors can pump through a radically higher number of people through the system.
I was on a campus recently with one of the vice chancellors from an Indian university who's in the audience today, and I said to him, "How are things going?" He said, "Adrian, we're totally full. Until I build that tower block over there, I can't take any more students on board." And I thought, this is crazy. You're delivering a quality education. There are people knocking at the door to come in, but you're waiting for bricks and mortar to be established before you can build it. The purpose of my visit to that campus was to talk to him about using his campus during the summer months for experiential learning programs where the peacocks run wild because there's no one on campus. And it struck me that there is capacity, but it's just in a different form. And one of the complaints about the Indian higher education system, and I think it's true for others across the world, which changes that the NEP provides green shoots for, is just a new way of thinking. And perhaps we don't need this structured term approach. We can use those fallow summer months to run programs more aggressively and use the capacity that is there already. So
not just fallow summer months. You see, we have created higher education as some sort of go and explore yourself kind of thing. This is all very good for relatively prosperous countries, and from even in India for the relatively wealthy. For the bulk of people, they are basically wasting their time as far as they are concerned. This is a privilege. On the other hand, if you think of education in the way I put it out, as a largely mundane thing, Many of these kids may be having day jobs. They can do apprenticeships. They can do all kinds of other things. And I don't think this interferes in any way with their education. It's a matter of how hard they want to work. For example, one of the toughest things you can possibly study for in this country is to become a chartered accountant. Now, it's set up in such a way that you are expected, in fact, to be working while you're doing your chartered accountancy. The quality of education is not poor. The testing system is rigorous. The people who come out of that are technically highly skilled. So if you can create these highly skilled chartered accountants using this mechanism, why can't I produce other kinds of skills using this same mechanism? Let them go and work while they're at it.
You've talked about disruption and its role in higher education. Many other sectors have already been disrupted beyond recognition over the last 5 years, and in a way where industrial leaders felt that their businesses were going to be redundant very quickly, but they found ways of innovating and creating new business models. The higher education landscape is yet to be fully disrupted, although, as you said in your remarks, there are early signs that that is now very much underway. One of the biggest fears and opportunities in higher education is the evolution of ChatGPT as a major disruptor. Just talk to us a little bit about where you see that disrupting the education landscape and how universities can respond to it.
Well, there is the almost trivial thing that has already happened, which is that doing projects, asking people to do projects is now pointless because ChatGPT will essentially write out the essay for you. So that kind of thing has already happened. I mean, whether we like it or not, it'll get even better. Now, of course, somebody may try and counter ChatGPT with an anti-GPT that can actually check whether this is a ChatGPT generated essay, but I'm quite sure ChatGPT will work that out as well and disrupt that as well. So I'm not getting into that arms race there. My thing is that I think it's actually a more useful to think of it as an ally than an enemy. It's an ally because effectively it makes redundant the last thing you needed the lecture theater for, which is Q&A. The lecture itself is redundant anyway because of YouTube, right? Any kid who has studied through the COVID period was anyway listening to the lecture online. So you're going to listen to the lecture online. Why do you need to listen to your professor's lecture? You can go to anywhere in the world and listen to anybody's lecture. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact my own kids had in their own universe swapped the passcodes of each other's universities because they had amongst themselves worked out which professor gives the best lecture on the planet. So if there was a great professor on Khan Academy, they were watching Khan Academy having stolen each other's passwords. So it made no difference. And now, of course, much of this is on YouTube. It's free. And all you need to go and see what are the comments and the number of hits. You can see, some of the better lecturers get 20, 30 million hits. So you can work out that this guy has a good lecture. Why would you want to do this? So the only reason you still needed your classroom was to do the Q&A. That is gone. ChatGPT 6 will have solved that problem beyond recognition. So you don't actually need lectures at all for any of the traditional repetitive lectures. That's gone. So, therefore, rather than see it as a problem, I think what you need to do is to simply standardize and simplify the lecture format and simply turn it into something that people need to go through. And then, as I said, the real fun is going to be to devise testing systems that actually test the person's understanding, knowledge, and problem-solving capabilities beyond what ChatGPT will do for him or her. So that is, I think, the real game. Rather than waste our time trying to improve the lecture, try and improve the testing system, which may have to now be done in multiple other ways, which is good, by the way. I think that will allow for better triangulation and attention now the universities will give to testing systems.
Corporates constantly complain that they don't get job-ready graduates. So in your vision of how this evolves, Do you see a different role that corporations have got to take in education, or where does the evolution of the academic delivery meet businesses so that that complaint ends once and for all?
I think that complaint will disappear within 10 years because universities can now scale up infinitely in some ways. See, the better ones that can create job-ready graduates can scale up infinitely because you can give lecture infinitely to infinite number of kids. And testing, yes, you have to invest a lot in good testing systems, but remember, using AI, you can also do this testing in a mass scale. So now what happens is, I am a corporate, I go and explain what I need. I will tell, either the universities will take on what my needs are and will create testing systems for me, or if I'm a large enough corporate, like if I'm Infosys or TCS or whatever, I will create my own testing systems and give my own degrees. So what will happen here is a huge churn, because right now the thing is that bricks and mortar has limited the gates. So the better ones cannot infinitely expand. But now in an environment where they can be infinitely large, if you cannot, either you provide something extremely specialized and survive, or you scale up massively, or you die. I mean, essentially what's going to happen is what Uber did to traditional taxis. That's basically what's going to happen.
One of the benefits of online education, particularly in India, is that there's been a greater take-up of female students, because they don't have to worry about going over to campuses, they don't have to be away from home too much, and they've been able to learn.
And the poor.
And the poor, yeah. So, and this is, I think, where the crux of India's challenge is that it's not just about the 1% or the 2%, it is the entire country that needs a high quality education and access to it.
Absolutely. So our problem is we have 1.4 billion people plus. Most of them are young. For me, building hostel rooms for so many people is a ridiculous thing. I haven't been able to provide them with proper primary homes. And now building an entire network of hostel rooms, people now have to travel all over the place and then give up 3-4 years of their lives, waste of time. They should be able to take this education anywhere they wish, anytime they want. Maybe they may have to travel occasionally, as I said, for short periods to do the interactive parts, or do the tests, or do in the science and engineering, maybe to visit a lab. But even there, those things can be brought close to this person. As I said, there is, and you can do it in multiple, you can cut and paste them in multiple ways. I may be working in Chennai. I did the first 2 years of the course in Chennai IIT, and my company shifted me to Delhi. I finished my course in IIT Delhi. How does it matter? I just need to get the credits.
I certainly subscribe to the opportunity to bring people together fairly regularly, because I think those soft skills, the communication, the collective problem solving in person, there's still a big role for that. And some of our greatest challenges around the world are not technological, they are people to people disagreements.
So let me say here, there are two things. First, it's not very obvious to me that universities will necessarily play that role. Do remember that the business of going to university as a very common thing is a late 20th century phenomenon. Till the 1950, only the rich really went to university, and the odd, really talented person who got a scholarship. So, it's not the case that people didn't socialize. There were other institutions for socializing. So, for example, in the West, YMCA played a role. It's now disappeared, but it was a very important. In India, there was a network of gymnasiums called akhadas, which used to play that role. Everybody was a member of an akhada in their neighborhood. They went there, the young men usually, but also sometimes women went there, and so on. So there were a whole bunch of institutions for socializing. So new kinds of institutions. So let me tell you, if universities are banking on this being their reason for survival, let me tell you, you're in for a shock. Other institutions will come and create that, take away that space.
I think that's in a sense good news for those international institutions who are in the audience, who are coming here scared of building full campuses for all the reasons you've outlined, the cost, the complexity, just the management of it. And many of those senior leadership who are here for this summit have said, how do we find a model that isn't a full campus but still creates the value? So I think between some of the levels of anxiety, hopefully there is some optimism and some ideas out there.
Yeah. Secondly, there are two things. First of all, don't assume that that social aspect cannot be taken care of by some other competitor. Technology is allowing all kinds of other things to happen as well. And there are other kinds of institutions which may do it. As I said, if people are routinely working while they're studying, maybe their companies will provide it. So don't count on the traditional view of socializing providing you with that space, number one. Number two, it's not even obvious anymore, particularly true of US campuses, that they anyway provide that socializing. Given the ideological breakdown that has happened in much of particularly US campuses, but also now in many other Western campuses, it's not clear to me that one of the roles that universities played is that providing diversity of views. That is not happening. I think people are underestimating the impact of this woke ideological purity that is imposed on Western campuses, has meant that the diversity that you were supposed to be exposed to is anyway happening. So why on earth should I waste time to go to a university to see diversity? I'm almost going to see a ideologically pure space where I'm actually not allowed to explore other ideas.
Just very briefly, you have the ear of the Prime Minister. What does the Prime Minister see the role of the government of India is in higher education beyond the NEP over the next 20 to 30 years?
With technology rapidly changing as it is, we don't have a view for 20, 30 years. Our basic point is this. Most important thing is change according to what happens, rather than get stuck with having these grand plans about exactly how it will go. We have no idea how technology is going to evolve. I'm going to adapt. My game is not predicting where technology is going to go, but to adapt to whatever happens quickly. By the way, that's not just true of education. I mean, you can hear my lectures in many other fields. This is my standing and this government's standing approach to the uncertainty of the world is feedback loop based adaptation will always beat grand plans, whether it is our approach to dealing with COVID or our approach to dealing with technology or with geopolitical situations or with education. This is our standard approach to dealing with the future. Rapid response rather than grand plans.
Very good, thank you. Professor Agarwal.
Two questions. Your regulatory frameworks are way out of line with your thinking, what you have kind of discussed so far. The government's regulatory framework. Number two, why can't you extend this backwards to K-12 education?
You're absolutely right. Regulatory frameworks may be out of whack, but we'll change them. But first you have got to figure out what is it that what is the environment that is emerging. As it emerges, we will change it. Nothing is set in stone. After all, we do this routinely in every other field. We are doing this in the stock market. We changed our tax system, introduced the GST system. In the economy, we introduced the insolvency and bankruptcy code and allowed all kinds of changes in the corporate sector. We are doing this in defense sector. We've gone from being heavily dependent on the Russians to now becoming much more building our own capacities and so on and so forth. So we routinely change. So do not for a moment think that we are not capable of changing our educational regulatory framework. We will change it, number one. Number two, as far as K-12 is concerned, a little more complicated there, because there, I think at least, particularly in the lower segment, you still need perhaps human intervention to bring in kids, smaller kids, and allow them. As they get older, you see, all these systems require that you know, roughly speaking, your ability to navigate, ask the right kind of questions, etc. For maybe class 11, 12, etc. may be able to deal with it. But say a class 4 student may still need to be guided for the time being. And in fact, this socializing issue becomes even more important. So I think for lower classes, some of this will happen as well. And in fact, there are opportunities here because, for example, for Indian language education, this is a huge opportunity. For me to find, several thousand teachers in Bengali who can teach science of a certain quality may be very difficult. But it may not be difficult for me to find 2 such people, get them to do a series of lectures that I can put on YouTube, and then the local teacher only has to make the kids listen to it and then answer some questions and help them physically with. So what I'm trying to say, even there we can do these things, but I can see that you need an adult to provide some amount of hand-holding. An 18 to 24-year-old, which is basically your university education, particularly undergraduate, 18 to 22, that basically they are dealing with standardized information. Masters and PhD are dealing with non-standardized education, information. So there I can see you again need to bring human beings back. But this is a sweet spot. Undergraduate education, in my view, is a sweet spot. Kids are old enough to be treated as adults, but they are still dealing with standardized knowledge. So this is a sweet spot where you can allow all these technologies to basically free play.
Thank you. I still think the regulatory framework needs to move faster.
Yeah, we'll change it.
Yes, and very rapidly.
Yeah, we can change it. In fact, the idea of these discussions that we're having is to leapfrog.
Yes.
I think in fairness to Sanjeev, for the past year, he's been pulling me into his office for ideas and more ideas and more ideas, and that's very much part of the role that you and Niti Aayog with Dr. Shah, who's been with us this morning, are driving, is to make sure that the NEP is just the beginning of a significant evolution of India's education landscape. Other questions?
So thank you for sharing your thoughts and giving us a picture where the students have the flexibility of choosing different programs from different universities and, work with the best of the professors across the world. But given that we are in a country which has got such a huge population, what, according to you, is the biggest challenge in making this a reality? That is number one. And number two, what is the timeline that you see that this can be actualized and can practice in a country like India?
The biggest constraint to mass scaling is that we continue to think of university education as bricks and mortar, large numbers of professors giving repetitive lectures. Both of these are expensive things to do, i.e., and of course, needing hostel rooms. So the mental image of university education still is some kid goes away for 4 years, does these repetitive lectures in a bricks and mortar place and spends 4 years doing it. This mental image is the constraint to mass scaling. And I'm just saying all of this is already redundant. The technology has already gone past this. So we are wasting our time trying to do this. We need to simply bypass this stage, and the alternative happens to be digital, an area which ironically we are very good at already. So we have this opportunity of literally skipping over the bricks and mortar expansions phase and going directly to digital education. And of course, it comes with all kinds of freedoms that are not possible in a bricks and mortar environment. So if I want to study some random combination of subjects, a digital system doesn't care, right? I may be studying law in the morning and English literature in the evening, or simultaneously. How does it matter to the digital system? It doesn't care. As long as I can then pass the exam testing systems later on, I can do 5 degrees in 5 colleges. How does it matter? If I have the absorption capability, I can do it in any combination as long as I get the credits. By the way, the NEP does one good thing, and that is to shift everybody to think in terms of accumulation of credits as the route to getting a degree. So if that is the way we're going to do it, then, frankly, we can open this up in all kinds of ways. I mean, you can do one credit in one university, another credit in another university. You can be doing 5 degrees at the same time. You can do it at any pace you want. Why do you have to do it in 4 years? Some people may do it in 7, some may do it in 2. How do I care?
A final question, sir, and then we'll wrap up.
Societies around the world have the uncanny knack of holding on to redundant concepts. And we've seen following COVID that universities, because of the demand from students, have snapped right back to on-campus bricks and mortar universities. What needs to change in society? What are the triggers that need to happen for society to acknowledge that perhaps we don't need to go to a bricks and mortar university?
So this may not be a problem in India, because the university educated population is a minuscule part of our population. So in the next decade or so, most of the kids who will be going in for university education are coming from backgrounds that have never had any university education. Their parents were perhaps the first generation that went through school. Their grandparents were perhaps illiterate. So in that environment, there is no preconceived notion of how university education may have to be delivered. So they may actually glide seamlessly into this new universe quite fast. This is one of the reasons, for example, why we have skipped very rapidly into digital payments. Because people who never had bank accounts went directly into a universe of digital payments. So sometimes there is an advantage of not having a legacy that you have to carry around.
Well, okay, one very last quick question, and then we'll have to wrap up because the next panel are eager to come on, I can see.
One thing we've noticed with, first of all, your talk was very, very thought-provoking and very interesting. But when we see people who are taking classes from all over the world via YouTube or Coursera, wherever, the drop-off rate is very high. So unless a student is very, very motivated, are you concerned about a lot of students dropping off and left by the wayside?
So what will happen is, since this will now be, you're looking at a world where the free market is going to function, you will see people will drop off or not drop off as it will. So new equilibriums and setups will happen. Some universities will figure out ways in which to keep students hooked on, and they will suddenly expand out. So I don't think that we are in the very early stages of this transition. So Coursera and so on are just just experiments along the way. And I'm 100% sure that people will work out formulas for keeping people hooked on the system. If traditional universities are relying on stickiness as their main reason for existence, I think you're in for a shock.
Yeah, I've seen with my own son, the gamification of his maths classes keeps him engaged far longer than if it was a simple school-taught maths lesson. So agree that technology will keep up with that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll agree it's been a thought-provoking, challenging session with Sanjeev. He's always got views that are many years ahead of traditional thinkers, and we've been very grateful for you to give up your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.